Welcome to Raising Consciousness with me, Lou Burrows, where raising human consciousness happens. On this show, I'm joined by guests to cover a range of topics and have conversations that will raise human consciousness for current and future generations. Now, let's dive into today's show. Hi everyone, welcome back to Raising Consciousness with me, your host, Lou Burrows. And today I'm very happy to bring Mike Ficara onto the podcast. This is the first time Mike's actually been on this show, although because I've done like 3 other shows in the past, we have collaborated on past shows. And at the time of recording this yesterday, I had the pleasure of going on his podcast as well. So it's like, I don't know, less than 12 hours ago, I seen him and then we're back here again. So it's all good. And he's joining us from the States, but I'll let him introduce himself. Mike, thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, let's kick this off by I would love to know who is Mike, and then we'll take the conversation from there.
Awesome. Well, first off, thanks for having me on, Luke. I appreciate it and appreciate all of you out there listening and showing support to the show. That's always important. So I always like to get that out of the way first. Who am I? Where am I going? And what am I doing? That is a great question. Like we talked about a little bit yesterday on my podcast, I'm 42 years old and I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So I became a business development consultant, which means I get to work with a variety of different businesses, help them grow and scale. That's kind of what I do. Who I am, is also another thing. I'm a father, a husband, a little bit lazy, all of the above. That's a little, nutshell of who I am. But I think we're going to dive deep into all of that stuff as we sort of go through this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was looking through your bio, and you've worked with some quite big brands. Like talk us through that. Talk us through the experience of that, and how working with them came to be.
Yeah, so I'll give you the short version of a long story, which means it's usually a medium story. But I was a terrible student growing up. I talk about that a little bit in my book, like Socks on a Rooster. Even one of the chapters entitled "I Failed First Grade." So that I always tell people that sets the bar for the level you're getting with me. But it was something I was never good at. So I always say, if you're not good as a student, what do? You become a teacher. So when I left, and then when I was in college, actually, I was working in a restaurant waiting tables, and one of my old teachers came in and said, "Hey, do you want to come substitute teach?" And like I said, it sounded like an easy job. I'm like, I'll do that. And I took the job. It wasn't an easy job, but I fell in love with teaching. So that gave me the opportunity to really sort of, finish my degree. I became an educator and did that for the better part of a decade and really loved teaching. I know here in the States, it's always a big thing that teachers don't get paid enough. And I agree they don't. But in some ways, I couldn't believe they paid me to do that job. It was so much fun. I loved, I married my wife. We had our first child. So money always ended up finding us, which was nice. So I always say the money's not always the problem. It's sometimes the happiness. And that was hard to learn. But I always knew I needed to make more money. So when I got my master's degree, because that's how you kind of progress in that industry, which once again, being a bad student, that was ironic. And then I unknowingly went to work for a startup. And when I say unknowingly, they were running a online school out of a elementary school, but they hired me as the assistant principal. So I thought I was getting like an administration job. Turns out, like I said, I was working for a startup. So it was a complete, came out of left field. We ended up getting investment from a guy by the name of Wayne Huizinga, which not a lot of people know who he is, but he was the founder of Blockbuster Video, Waste Management. He was like our local billionaire here in where I live in my town in Florida. And he used to own one of the NFL football teams here. He actually brought baseball here and all that. So I was promised everything on the sun, stocks, options, equity, my own private plan. I got none of that, but I did have the opportunity to learn a lot. And when he ended up selling that company, I, like I said, got nothing, but I learned a lot. I said, wait a second, I can either go back to the classroom or I think I could help people out. So just started to go to consult for businesses, randomly started to ask people, attend conventions, and started slowly working with businesses, mainly in the educational space, because that was my background. And then it grew. I mean, I tell you, Luke, there's not an industry I haven't worked in: oil and gas, telecommunications, retail. We've done stuff with CBD. We've done stuff with chefs, personal brands. I mean, I've worked with almost every type of business you could think of, helping them grow and scale. Large companies like NEC, Konica Minolta. Last week, I was working with Hilton Hotels and Hyatt Hotels. So, I mean, I've had the opportunity to just work with a variety of different people, and it's really been a blessing. And like I said, I couldn't tell you quite how I did it. I just kept doing it, and things kept happening. That's kind of the ironic thing.
Yeah, I love that, man. Like so many points to touch upon. Although I am fascinated by the range of clients that you've worked with and the range of kind of obviously in different industries as well and size of clients as well. I suppose what's coming to mind for me is like the difference between working, let's say, with somebody like a small business to a large company to somebody who is like building their personal brand. Yeah, what's the difference between working with all these different clients and how has that helped you to learn and grow ultimately?
Well, I think before we talk about the differences, we got to talk about the similarities, right? And what's similar, what I've seen, whether you're a personal brand, one person company, or whether you're a major corporation, there's three fundamental things that are still true on how you grow that business and how that business functions. And it's really marketing, sales, and implementation. And I found in any business, if you look at those three areas, if those three areas are not firing properly or not working properly, I don't care whether you're trying to make $100,000 or $100 million. If marketing, sales, and implementation are not functioning on all levels, that is where businesses don't succeed. So, and marketing is very deep. We go into the weeds on that, right? Your brand, how you're managing that, Facebook ads, that's everything. Sales is how you're taking that lead and that customer that's coming and closing them and getting the purchase. But to me, implementation is the most important, right? And that's where a lot of businesses, I think, fail. That's where I've seen a lot of businesses fail, both big and small. They don't always, deliver what they promise, right? After we did our podcast, after I had someone else on, we were talking about restaurants and steakhouses, right? And me, I love steak. That's my favorite thing to go to. I could go to a small restaurant, maybe pay less money every night of the week if I wanted to, but instead I go once a month to a really nice steakhouse because why? I want that experience. It's better food, the customer service is better, things like that. So I've seen businesses big or small, if they understand implementation after they sell their product, I don't care whether it's a widget, whether it's something as simple as like, this phone stand, or whether it's something as complex as an iPhone or installing an air conditioner, whatever it is. That customer service is where companies really win, right? Is how you service your customer and how you deliver to them. So those similarities are the same no matter what the business is, right? And I think if those three areas aren't firing on all cylinders, things just don't happen. The other thing I'll go into too is I think process is important. If there's not processes and operations in any of these, it just doesn't work. In the small businesses, I've seen that they kind of don't have any. So it's important to put that in. And the larger businesses, the main differences are they have this is the way we've always done it, itis, as I like to call it. So they're always like, well, this is the way we've always done it, or this is the way we've always done it, everything. So to get them to change and move is sometimes a little bit harder. And sometimes that's what's holding them back, right? Big brands, great recognition. It's like, hey guys, I know you're doing this and it seems like you're successful. And I would say that's really the main difference. And in some ways, the similarities, right? Small and large businesses both have this. I think when you start out with a new business and a new idea, which I never understood this on social media, everyone's like, I told people I'm starting a business and they're not supporting me. I'm like, usually that's the stage everyone's telling you you're good, right? Oh, that's a great idea. I love it. I love that you're doing that. So proud of you for building it. It's when you ask them to buy something that usually that criticism comes in, right? It's like, so do you want to like come to my new restaurant, or do you want to like, join my company? That's where the hesitation comes in. Large companies, I feel like they have that same disease. Well, we're making money. This is the way we've always done it. Yeah, but that's why, I kid around here in the States. We had Sears, Toys R Us, Blockbuster. I mean, you had these companies that were massive that are basically gone, right? They just disappeared, not because Amazon took them out or Walmart took them out or someone else took them out, because they didn't adapt. You look at other companies that have been around for a long time that are still here, like Disney and other ones, they adapted. So I think, similarities and differences, there's a lot, but I think there, a lot of things that are the same, but then the ability to adapt and change and processes, I think are two of the most important things.
And in terms of that, because I'm fascinated by that and the ability for companies to innovate as well, I couldn't think of the word for a moment there. It's fascinating, and obviously when they're in that mindset of like, this is always, it kind of goes back to the point that we were a little bit talking about yesterday in terms of having that fixed mindset on like not being able to see maybe a new way of doing something or where the future is going. And so through your process of working with clients, like, is that part of your process to help them to adapt and then to continue to grow? And how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, in short, the answer is yes. I even had a client call me yesterday, and they're like, hey, can you come out and speak to our sales team for one day? And I was like, or just give a motivational talk. They wanted me to just come out and speak to them. So I was like, yeah, sure. And then like 10 minutes later, I got another text and was like, well, like, could you do a 1 or 2 day workshop? And then like 25 minutes later, I got another text, and they're a relatively large company. Like, hey, like, I think we just need full marketing help with everything. Like, what could you do? It was like, let's go back to what the problem is, So I think a lot of times in looking at before we even try to do anything in pivot and change, it's like going to the doctor in some ways, right? You don't feel well, you just don't know why. So it's like, well, we got to run a battery of tests and see what's wrong with you. It's the same thing in a business. Business is, and I think businesses could always be better. I kid around. There's some people that don't go to the doctor because they know if they run a test, they're going to find something wrong with me. So I just don't go. The same is true in your business. I could probably walk into any business. I don't care who it is, right? I even have the terrible habit of doing it when I go somewhere. I'm like, oh, like they could do this different, or they could do that different. Every business has something they can change. So I think you have to diagnose the problem first, right? Then you have to talk to the leadership or the owners of the business and say, do you want to solve this problem? So you got to get them to commit to solving the problem, right? I think you like you said, we talked about this yesterday. A lot of it is consciousness. It's an awareness of like, hey, you have a problem. Do you want to solve the problem? And then this is how you solve the problem. And then are you willing to commit to the solution, right? So there's so much that has to be committed to before we even take action. Because if the commitment is not there, I could throw out a great idea, but if people don't want to execute it and don't want to lean into that process, I'm a big American football fan. So like, if you don't want to run the play, it doesn't matter how good the play is written. If the quarterback, when they get on the field, doesn't run the play right, and the wide receiver doesn't run the play right, the coach could be the best coach in the world, but if the players can't execute the play, it doesn't matter. You're never going to win the game, right? So you have to get everybody kind of on board. There's an analysis, a commitment, and then an adaptation as you're going along that I think really requires a lot of these businesses to move and make those changes.
I love that. So in terms of that, like if we have a small business owner listening to this, and also a business or somebody who is maybe part of a large company, team manager, etc., what would be like a quick take that you would give each of them? So somebody in a large company who's maybe running a marketing team, and somebody who is a solopreneur maybe, and just kind of getting started.
I think the biggest thing is always be a part of the conversation. And it's a cliche thing that we say nowadays, but I feel like there's still so many people out there that are neglecting social media, and neglecting it on multiple angles. I mentioned that event that I just spoke at, a lot of large companies there. And, I think the entrepreneur, I asked how many of you are connected to your employees on LinkedIn, and good majority of the room raised their hand, right? I'm like, okay, how many of you are connected to those same employees on another social media platform, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, whatever it is? And like literally like maybe, 2 or 3 people in the room raise their hand. We're not understanding, I think, as we move to a remote work environment, you have to be very connected to your team, I think, on multiple social media platforms, because that's how you're going to understand the culture of your company and what's going on in their lives. And it sounds like an invasion of privacy a little bit. I think for some people it's hard for them to get around that, but I think that's very important. And I think that's how you identify leaders. I think that's how you connect with your company. That's how something as simple as, if you're not, and someone's like, well, like that just seems like, well, like, why do I want to bottom with that? Maybe I see a political view, I don't like that. I have a religious view or something like that. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a negative. But the positive could be, it's like, hey, it's Luke's birthday next week. And, I follow him on LinkedIn, and he's really good about posting about industry articles and things that we do, which I'll talk about that in a second. But I really don't know what he's into. And then if someone's like, well, I follow Luke and I know he's into blank, right? I know he likes Beats headphones or whatever it is, right? Then we know what to get him for his birthday. And something as simple as that, as cheesy as it sounds, creates a connection with people, right? And I think that's what running it, whether you're a solopreneur, you're going to want to build a team at some point, or you're going to want to connect with your customers or whatever it is. I think we can't be afraid to be connected to people on social media because of the negatives. And I think that's something that a lot of people have. I do think from the standpoint too of, you have to train everyone now in your organization, big or small, up and down. You have to be a part of your industry's conversation, right? I think there's a difference between selling what you do online and being a part of your industry's conversation. Sharing, I think especially on LinkedIn, you should be sharing industry articles. Like it amazes me how I'll see a company with like 1,000 employees and one on their social media posts. It's like, do you even tell your employees to like follow your page and encourage them to go like it and share that information? Because that generates clients, right? Like everyone says to me, like, how do you generate business? How do you generate leads? I'm like, I don't. I don't. I just put content out there and people call me. Like that call I got yesterday was unsolicited. It was just like, hey, I see you putting out content. I see you putting out content. I see you putting out content. Can you do business with me? I don't have to market for leads. I don't have to build a funnel. I don't have to do any like that, part of my French bullshit that everyone else does. That's not legit, right? I just keep putting content out, and that's how I've been able to grow and generate business for my company. And more importantly, it's been, the way that I've stayed connected and understood whether or not I'm being authentic or I'm being legit, or that I really understand my industry and what's going on.
Yeah, I love that. And it's almost like for your team to become the advocates of the brand as well. So that's, obviously one way of doing that is if you really get to know them and what they're passionate about and what they enjoy, as you're saying, like that builds that connection. And, I've definitely worked in companies where you just kind of feel like, well, no one ultimately, you're just going in and doing a job. Like they don't care about ultimately anything you're going through. And that doesn't lead to, in my mind, also like anything good, because if they get another opportunity, then they're not going to be loyal, right? Like they're just going to see ya, like type of thing. So, I definitely, I'm diving into a lot more of stuff around kind of culture building and that as well, because, from my own experiences, and fascinated to learn about that.
And if you don't mind, there's a flip side to that too, because
Mm,
this has come up a couple times. There are people who just like working, right? There are
mm,
people that just want to go in, they want to do their job, and then they want to go home and enjoy some other facet of their life that they love, whether it's a hobby, whether it's a club, whether it's a church, whether it's a group that they're with. And that's okay too, right? Like everyone that works for you, and this is something that it's funny. I was with one of my employees, and he actually works remotely, but him and I got together in person a little while ago, and he was talking. He's like, the greatest thing I think you ever taught me was that no one's going to work as hard in my business as I am, or no one's going to work as hard in my team as I am, because I love what I do. But there's some people that are just going to be position utility players, but they're perfectly happy with that too. We can't convince everybody to be entrepreneurial in an organization. And I think that's the biggest problem people have is, yes, you want that and you should hire for that, right? I think you should hire for that in certain levels, but there's certain tactical things where people are just going to be perfectly happy. I've got one of the guys on my team. He's amazing. He is amazing at what he does, but he'll literally start his day and end his day at the same time. And then he loves video games and he'll play video games till the wee hours of the night. But that's what he loves to do, right? And it would be like, yeah, but like, shouldn't he be hustling and like doing more? Couldn't he grow and be better in that position? Absolutely. But the man is happy. Like, why do we want to disturb that? It's okay that there's certain people that there's that way, and there's certain people that want to hustle. Like, as a business owner, I think, and even as a manager in the business, you have to understand that there's certain people that are just there for that, and that's okay too, right? And you have to be very accepting of that, and that's hard for a lot of entrepreneurs to do, because they're like, the mission and it's this and it's that and blah 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 blah. And I'm all for that. I believe in that 1,000%. But there's also, you have to understand, there's people that are just going to come to you because they just want to work, they want to make enough money to pay their bills, and then go do what they enjoy.
yeah, I think like the point on that is, that employee, what he loves, right? I think there's a lot of companies that are out there that they have like no idea actually who like they're working with ultimately, and so there's no level of connection. I think the workplace is becoming a lot more built on having connection with people, and I just like think like that's the more and more and more the direction we're going is like built on having connection, because we're at work a lot, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a huge part of our life, and so if we don't have that connection, then for me it's like, well, what's the point, kind of thing.
Yeah. But I'll share a great, and it's okay if I share one more story off of that though, because he played video games, he connected with a lot of other people in my company that played
Yeah.
video games. So all these guys, we have one project we run, and I didn't get one email, one message, nothing on it. Project started and got finished, and I didn't hear from anybody. So I was like, so we're on the Zoom, and I'm asking, there was the three guys are on there, and I'm like, guys, how did this get done? And I didn't hear from anybody. And they were like, oh, we were doing it all on Discord, because we play video games together and we all talk on Discord, and then we just like, we've left it open now, and we run everything for work through Discord. I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, what's Discord? I feel like an old man for the first time. I'm like, what's Discord? I downloaded it on my computer. They started talking to me on it. I was like, what's going on? I'm like, are you watching me? Can you see what's going on? Now our entire company runs off Discord for internal communication. Not entire company, but we use it as a tool in our company now. So, right. So it's how we communicate throughout the day. It's how we message. It's how we do things. I like it much better than Slack, to be honest with you. I was never a big Slack fan. So I love Discord now, but it all came because my employees like video games. They connected in after hours and play video games together, and then they used it to collaborate. And it became a tool in our business now that allows us to be massively successful. So it's interesting when you let those things happen in your organization, you let that culture creep in, what good could come out of it as well.
So on that point, where do you stand on micromanaging?
These are the two things that intrigue me. Micromanaging and the word bully are like, I feel like the words of 2022 that people don't understand, right? Because I think it's very easy to say you're being micromanaged when you're being told what you don't like to do. And I see a lot of people nowadays saying, well, I feel like I'm being micromanaged. Well, like, listen, it's a catch-22, right? Like, and I'm not saying that you should micromanage, like, and I think we have to define what micromanaging is, right? Like, if someone's like, hey, if like every hour your boss is like, you have to send me an email so I know you're sitting at your desk working when you're remote, that's micromanaging, right? Like, or if you're in an office situation and they're always hovering over your shoulder, or there's 16 internet filters and they block cellular signals in the building, to me that's micromanaging, right? Giving you tasks or holding a meeting or doing things like that is not micromanaging, right? And I think every business needs to run differently. I know businesses that have to meet on Zoom every day to be successful. I know businesses that never meet on Zoom and meet maybe once a quarter in person to be successful. I know businesses that never meet at all and communicate completely through Discord or Slack or whatever it is to be successful. So I think it's a definition of what is micromanagement versus what process or what's needed, right? Because if a process isn't there, right, what's the number one complaint of an employee working in a company? Well, no one knows what they're doing, and they just told me to do my job, and I don't have a process, or I don't have anything to follow, or I don't know what to do, or there's no system. So it's like this thin line between having a system and being micromanaged, right? And I only use the bullying example because, like, even with my kids, like I tell them, I'm like, they're like, oh, like so and so is bullying them. I'm like, well, why are they bullying them? Well, they wanted to do, XYZ. They wanted to go play on the playground on the horse, and I wanted to go play on the duck, and they said no, so that's bullying. I said, whoa, that's not bullying. That's a disagreement. Let's start defining things in the place that they live. Like, kids have gotten so easy with saying, or like, we can't look at like direction and management as micromanaging. We have to look at it as direction. Is it micromanaging in some cases? Yes, but I think too many people have gotten comfortable using that word as a way to justify doing what they want instead, right? So you have to have a very fine line. And to me, it comes down to productivity. I always tell my team, if I give you a deliverable and it gets done, I don't care how it gets done. But if I see they can't get it done, I have to step in and I have to give them the guidance and direction they need. I think micromanaging to me is a little more of like, like I said, that authoritarian thing where like they make you do dumb stuff just to make sure you're working, that doesn't commit to the process, or it's when somebody tries to do something they can and you just step in and take it over. To me, that's micromanaging. So I think it's a definition of the word. And like I said, I get a little frustrated with it because I've seen people use it too loosely in some ways. I agree with you. It's a bad thing. I think it's always a bad thing. But I think managing of people has to happen to grow a business. It's just like a necessary evil of what we do,
Yeah, I mean, like I did it. So that question came from obviously the story you were sharing where, the team completed the project and you were like, oh, and then you learned about something and they were able, I guess, like self-sufficient enough to get on with it. And actually you having that culture where like they don't always like come running to you, and you've created that culture where people can find the solutions to the challenges and problems that come up ultimately.
Yeah, and I think it's a great, and I think to your point, I love doing that, and the reason why I asked them why it went so well and what happened so smoothly is I'm a big fan of duplicating success, right?
Yeah,
So like when I found out that they did this, I was like, wait a second, how'd you guys do this without emailing me and without communicating with each other? Because I knew that couldn't be done. First of all, I was like, some communication had to happen somewhere. Where are you guys chatting? Not that I need to be involved in or need to oversee it or do that. I was like, how do I duplicate this then, right? And that's why I said, because then the tool became a part of our organization. So
part of the process. Then you
and sometimes sometimes I think sometimes micromanaging is less the problem, and macro-managing is sometimes too much of the problem, right? We're so there, and I kid around like and this is a great story. We had a quarterly meeting, and we came in and we wrote down all of our clients on the top of the board on up top. We're on a whiteboard, right? With all of our clients on the top and all the tasks we do for our clients down the left side. And then we built this grid out, right? Then we went through and put everyone's initials in on what they do for the clients, right? So we're putting, and there's probably about 10 of us in the room. Do you know, and I'm part of the company, my initials were not in any box. And someone turns to me in the meeting and goes, why isn't Mike on any of those? And I was like, yeah, no one knows what the hell I do here. But in all seriousness, it's because I'm put so much effort and trust into the team that my job is just to be there to make sure the process goes well. And if not, I'm the guy they come to and say, hey, like, I need this, I need that. So to your point on the micromanaging and doing these things, I think it's like you have to learn how to be micro and macro at the same time and manage properly, right? And then when you see something winning, you have to say, wait a second, why? I go back to the football analogy. If you score a touchdown on the play, you're going to look at that play and be like, how do we do that again in the next game and the next game and the next game, but in against the defense in a different way, in a different team? It's always going to be different. So I think you have to also have that adaptation. And like I said, not get this is how we've always done it, ITIS as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So with you in your role, like obviously being an entrepreneur and podcast host and everything that you do, what's like the top biggest challenge you've faced in your journey so far? And if you've overcome it, like what was that process like? And if you're still overcoming it, yeah, what's that journey continuing to be like, and how are you overcoming it?
I mean, I think in any business, the people are always the biggest issue. Let's just be honest, right? It's always the biggest obstacle, whether it's your clients, whether it's your employees. And I say that in the nicest way possible because, it's hard to find good people. I'll give you another example. We're bringing on interns for the summer. So I asked one of my directors, and he's probably around your age, 26, 27. And I said, hey, we're like, hey, you interview the intern. And I wasn't gonna be able to be on the call, but I was like, hey, listen, like I could be on the call. Like I said, you do the interview, but I'll be on the call. He calls me about 10 minutes before the interview, and he's like, listen, I'm never interviewed someone before. I don't know what to do. I'm like, just ask questions, go for it. I give him a few tips. We got on. He went in, did it. He asked a few things. I asked a few things afterwards. He's like, oh, thank God you were here. I didn't know what to do. I said, listen, this comes with time, right? This comes with time. Understanding how to interview it. It's probably interviewing people is the hardest thing for me. I don't like doing it. I think it's hard because I'm more of a, I don't think there's any tactical questions you could ask, ask in an interview that you're going to understand anything in particular. So for me, interviewing people and hiring people is the hardest thing, I think, because it's always difficult to understand that talent, and it's always difficult to understand. Really, you never know how someone's going to work out. I've hired people that look great on paper that have been terrible in the process, and I've hired people that look terrible on paper but have been great in the process. So for me personally, that's the hardest thing is hiring and firing. I think are some of the hardest things for me to do personally. I think at the end of the day, though, it's all hard. And that's what makes it fun,
Yeah, of course. No, it's interesting. I'm not sure if it was, I read it in a book or I think maybe it was on a call. Somebody was saying like, so sometimes in a business, the more people you have, the more problems, right? Like,
yeah.
But that's what we sign up for, because we need people also to help to, as the CEO, as the founder, as the entrepreneur, to help to bring our vision into reality ultimately. So then it's about obviously finding the right people, and as you said, that can be a challenge. And I'm similar, like in terms of interviewing, kind of going through the hiring process. Like, usually I just jump on a Zoom call and just have a conversation with somebody, and just just think about it as a conversation, and just try to get to know them, their values, what they're all about, what they love to do, and how they and what their skills, strengths, gifts, talents are, and how those can serve what we're doing, and also how I can help them to grow in their role as well. So yeah, that's a similar challenge that I face ultimately. So would you say to other people who face that challenge, like obviously repetition, you get better at it? Like, what's your
No, I think it's just hire and fire fast. It's like
okay.
it's like falling in love, right? You just got to
just go through them all.
Yeah, just keep dating, right? Just keep dating,
yeah.
just keep winning. I would say, like, I met my wife. We dated for a year and we were married. Of the following year. So it's like, but it doesn't mean I didn't. All my life I didn't meet other people for years at a time and date other women. So it was like, you got to just keep doing that. You got to date people, hire and fire fast, see who fits into. I think knowing your company culture is important. Having processes are important that people can follow. And like I said, hire and fire fast. I think that's just the biggest thing. It's such a cliche saying, but it's so true. I think hire and fire fast. I always say it sounds insensitive. Start paying low so you can work your way up, right? A lot of times you'll overpay for a position that you could have underpaid for, and then brought that person up, and they're going to appreciate that more, and you're going to appreciate it more, and you can invest in them in different ways, right? So I would say if the position in the market, I've heard people say, well, if position in the market earns 30,000 a year, pay 40,000 a year and people work harder. It's like, no, that's not necessarily true. Hire them at 30, see how they do, maybe invest that 10 in the first year in training them and processes and programs, and then start to incrementally give them more money. You know what I mean? So to me, that would be my advice in that area.
Absolutely, man. Like, in the time we have left, would love to touch on another subject that a lot of entrepreneurs face, and I think that's starting businesses ultimately because they think, oh, it's going to get me rich, and then that's going to lead to happiness and kind of and that. And I just love to know your experience with that. And it sounds like you didn't start a business for that reason, but I would love to, in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. My father always said, money can't buy happiness, but it can prevent a lot of misery, right? That was always his thing.
Yeah.
And it's true. I feel like it's very true. I think I always made career moves and did things, and especially very early on, took business for the money, right? But I can tell you years where I made a lot of money and years where I made a little money. The happiness has not been dependent on the amount of money I made. It's been dependent on the projects and the clients and the team that I worked with and the people that I enjoyed doing things with. I always say the worst day of, not the worst day of my life, but the worst, day of my professional life in some ways was the day I bought my dream car. And the reason why I say that is, I always wanted a Cadillac Escalade, always wanted an Escalade. I finally got an Escalade, bought it. It was exciting buying it. The first couple of days were exciting, but after that, I was like, wait a second, I don't feel any better. I don't feel any, people aren't treating me any differently. Like, sure, like when I was in the supermarket parking lot, I was going to say, wow, nice car. But like, does that, did they buy anything from me? Did they do anything? No, it didn't change my business acumen. It didn't, more importantly, it didn't change my happiness. And the reason why I say that is too, it gave me nothing to look forward to. It's not like when I worked really late at night or when I was frustrated or whatever, like I go online and look at Escalades and I was like, man, like that's what I want. I don't want a Lambo. Like that stuff doesn't excite me, right? Like, so for me, I had to learn what the happiness was, and more importantly, how to constantly change that and tweak that. Now I invest more in less in things that I want and people that I want, or in things that I want. I invest in people that I want. So what I mean by that is now I'll hire more people. I can make a lot more money and work a lot more. I make a lot less money and I also work a lot less now. So I have people that do jobs that I probably shouldn't even be paying them to do because I should probably be doing it, but I don't want to do it. Like, and that's why I said in the beginning, I'm kind of lazy, right? So I was like, wait a second, like, you mean like I don't have to clean my house? I don't have to cut my lawn. I get paid. So I pay people to do stuff in my personal life, and then my professional life as well. Like, I'm very active on social media, but I pay someone to write my content. I pay someone to edit my podcast. I pay someone to do these things. Why? Because, and to be honest with you, the podcast and a lot of that stuff are hobbies for me. But even in my business, I have more people than I probably need on my team because I don't want to do the work. And I found that if I don't want to do the work, I could give it to them, become, more of that leadership role, which is what I enjoy. I enjoy leading. I enjoy mentoring, and all kidding around aside. But then also, I can stop work most days at 3:00 and then go spend time with my family. So there's a bigger ROI on that, and that brings me more happiness. To be honest with you, I could sit on my couch and watch a bunch of Netflix shows late at night now because I've built a business now where I can hire a team. Couldn't have done this 10 years ago. Don't get me wrong. So this isn't something like everyone's like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, and then they sit on the couch and watch Netflix
itself, right?
So whereas buying the Escalade should have been the reward, now watching TV is the reward. You know what I mean? Being able to catch up on my favorite show or sit and watch a movie without the guilt of like there's work to do or I'm not being the best person I could be. Now at 42, I have no guilt sitting on the couch. And could I not be sitting on the couch and watch TV, get off the couch and do things? But I've said this on before. Spending that time with my wife, or watching a football game with my kid, or watching the basketball game with my kid, or watching a baseball game with my kid, or just watching a show I love on TV, there's an ROI on that. So why not do that? Could I be doing something that generates more money and creates generational wealth? Yes, but my kids can make their own fucking money. Like, I'll let them enjoy it while I'm making it. They live with me, but they can go make their own money. That's more rewarding. I've never seen any kid handed money that was successful in life. So
no, I feel you. I think one of the biggest, mindset shifts that people are to go through is that of like applying that mindset. I think it's quite easy for entrepreneurs to understand this, like in their personal lives, because they feel like, actually, should I be cleaning the house, right? But it's like actually knowing in a way, like for me, it's making the bed or like whatever it is, like as you're growing up, maybe like doing that so you build character and kind of all that sort of stuff. But then we spoke about it a bit yesterday around like consciousness and around actually designing what you want your life to be like, right? And I think that's a conversation that a lot, because it's frowned upon in society. So just wanted to kind of throw that in. Awesome. Mike, where can people find you online if they want to learn more about what you do? And actually, I think we've got about a minute left or so. Do you have any quick final thoughts, quick takeaways that people can share? And then, where can people find you online?
Yeah, great question. So MikeFicara.com, just my name, MikeFicara.com, which I've heard sometimes you shouldn't spell your name out on a podcast, but I do it anyway. Go on there. That's my website. There is a shop on there. If you go and you click on shop, there's a link to buy my book on Amazon, but there's also a shop. If they click on shop, you can see my book there. And if you enter in the word podcast, that means you heard me on a podcast and you get the book for just shipping it. So you get the book for free. So definitely check that out. I'm Mike Ficara on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, just Mike Ficara. So definitely would love to connect there. And word of advice to everybody, just don't worry, be happy, man. Just enjoy life and do your thing.
I love that, man. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today, mate. And everyone definitely check out those links, get Mike's book. And I will look forward to seeing you all on the next episode of the podcast. And for more after today's show, be sure to head on over to raisingconsciousness.show to get all of the show notes, transcriptions, videos for each episode, and a hell of a lot more. And if you got value from this episode, found it insightful, or learned a thing or two, please leave a review where you can let everyone know that this show is worth checking out. I appreciate you so much. You'll be hearing from me in the next episode.